The Crescent Hotel in Eureka Springs, Arkansas, was supposed to be a place of elegance and luxury when it first opened in 1886, but time has a way of twisting beauty into something darker. Today, it's not just known as America's most haunted hotel. It's a labyrinth of shadows, whispers, and restless souls that never checked out. Emily and her two friends, Marcus and Jenna, decided to stay the weekend at the Crescent, curious about the rumors. The building stood high above the town, its Victorian-style towers cutting through the fog like jagged teeth. Even before stepping inside, Emily felt the air turn heavy, like something invisible was pressing down on her chest. The receptionist smiled, but her eyes flickered nervously when she handed over their keys. "You're in room 218, she said, lowering her voice. "That's one of the active rooms." Emily thought it was just part of the hotel's marketing gimmick, but Marcus noticed the way the woman's hand trembled. The moment they entered, the room felt wrong. The temperature dropped suddenly, making their breath visible even though the heater rattled in the corner. The bed creaked by itself, as if someone invisible had just sat down. Jenna laughed nervously. "Guess we're not alone." That night, Emily woke up to a sharp knock on the door. When she peered through the peephole, no one was there, only the long, empty hallway stretching into darkness. She turned around and froze. A man in old-fashioned worker's clothes stood at the edge of her bed, his face pale, crushed on one side as if his skull had been broken. His eyes stared right through her. Emily screamed and the figure dissolved into smoke. The next morning, a housekeeper whispered to her, "They say he was a stonemason who fell to his death while building the hotel." His spirit never left room 218. Later, the group decided to explore the basement, which once served as a hospital in the 1930s. Norman Baker, a fake doctor, had turned the hotel into a so-called cancer hospital, scamming desperate patients with bogus cures. Many people died there, their bodies hidden away in the morgue below. The basement smelled damp and metallic, like rust and blood. Emily swore she heard faint sobbing echoing through the dark hallways. Marcus found an old autopsy table still stained. Suddenly, the lights flickered out. In the pitch black, Jenna gasped. "Someone's here." A dim glow appeared. An emaciated woman in a hospital gown. Her eyes hollow, her mouth opening in a silent scream. Dozens more figures materialized behind her. Patients who had suffered and died under Baker's cruel hands. Their presence filled the corridor with grief and rage. Emily's flashlight clicked back on, but the hallway was empty. Only the chill remained. On their last night, the group couldn't sleep. The walls groaned, footsteps shuffled across the ceiling, and whispers filled the room. At exactly 3:17 a.m., Emily's bed shook violently. She bolted upright. And there he was again, the stonemason, only this time, he wasn't alone. The patients from the basement crowded into the room, their faces twisted in pain, their mouths moving in silent chants. The lights exploded, plunging everything into darkness. When the hotel staff came the next morning, they found the room in chaos. Furniture overturned, mirror shattered, sheets ripped. But Emily, Marcus, and Jenna were gone. Their belongings were still there, untouched, as if they had vanished into thin air. Guests who stay in room 218 today swear they still hear screaming in the middle of the night. And if you listen carefully in the basement, you can hear the faint sound of someone knocking from inside the morgue freezer. The Crescent Hotel doesn't forget its guests. Sometimes, it keeps them forever. The Crescent Hotel stood like a crown of stone above Eureka Springs, Arkansas. At dusk, its towers cut into the blood-red horizon, and the woods behind it whispered with the voices of cicadas and unseen creatures. Emily, Marcus, and Jenna arrived just before nightfall, dragging their suitcases up the wide stone steps. They had heard stories. Everybody had. America's most haunted hotel, a place where the past had never died. "Looks more like a castle than a hotel," Marcus muttered, tilting his head at the Gothic towers. Emily shivered. "Yeah, a castle full of ghosts." Inside, the lobby was beautiful, restored to its 19th century elegance. A fireplace roared, and the chandeliers glowed golden. But beneath the glamour, the place felt heavy. The receptionist, a pale woman with dark circles under her eyes, gave them their keys. "You're in room 218, she whispered, almost like a warning. Marcus smirked. The haunted room? Perfect. But Emily noticed the woman's hand trembling. The room was charming in its antique style. Wooden bed frame, velvet drapes, floral wallpaper, but the air was icy cold, as if winter lived in the walls. That night, Emily couldn't sleep. Around 2:30 a.m., she heard footsteps pacing the room above them. Slow, heavy, dragging footsteps. She sat up, frowning. There was no room above theirs. Then came the knock. 3 sharp raps at the door. Emily crept over and peeked through the peephole. No one. When she turned back, she froze. A man stood by the bed wearing old work clothes, his head slanted unnaturally, skull crushed as if from a terrible fall. His eyes were gray and empty, but they locked on hers. Emily screamed and the figure dissolved into smoke. In the morning, a housekeeper whispered while changing the linens. Room 218 belongs to Michael, a stonemason who fell to his death during construction. He still thinks he's working. Sometimes he plays with guests. Sometimes he gets angry. Later, the group wandered into the lower levels of the hotel, where the air smelled like damp stone and mildew. Years ago, the hotel had been converted into a hospital by a man named Norman Baker. He promised desperate cancer patients miraculous cures. But he was nothing more than a con man. Hundreds had died here in agony. The basement stretched like a maze, walls sweating with moisture. Old gurneys lined the hall, their wheels rusted stiff. Marcus ran his hand along the cold tiles. "Creepy," he muttered. Then Jenna stopped. "Did you hear that?" A faint sob echoed down the corridor, then another, and another, until the hall was alive with the sound of weeping. A pale figure emerged from the shadows, a woman in a hospital gown, eyes hollow, skin thin as paper. She reached out, her lips trembling. Behind her, dozens of others appeared, patients, their faces twisted in grief, some clutching their stomachs, some holding out their hands as if begging for help. The lights flickered. Emily screamed as the figures rushed forward. Then the flashlight clicked back on, and the hall was empty. Only the sound of dripping water remained. That night, Marcus insisted they return. "We have to see the morgue," he said. "It's where they kept the bodies." Reluctantly, the girls followed. The morgue door groaned open, revealing a cold chamber. An old autopsy table stood in the center, its surface stained and scarred. Metal drawers lined the walls, body storage. Still intact, Marcus chuckled nervously. "But nobody's opened these in years." He pulled one drawer. Inside was empty, but the smell of rot exploded into the room. Suddenly, the other drawers rattled violently. One by one, they banged open as if something inside was trying to escape. The lights went out. In the dark, Emily felt icy fingers graze her arm. Then a voice, hoarse and angry, whispered in her ear, "He lied to us." When the lights flicked back, Marcus was standing stiff, his eyes wide, his lips moving soundlessly. Behind him, a shadow stretched across the wall, tall and hunched, wearing the outline of a doctor's coat. Norman Baker. The road up to the Crescent Hotel twisted through thick Arkansas woods. Fog rolled down from the Ozark Hills, and the hotel loomed above like a Gothic castle, its stone walls glowing pale in the dying light. Emily had read about it for years, America's most haunted hotel. But reading was one thing. Standing before it was another. "Looks like Dracula's summer house," Marcus muttered, adjusting his backpack. Jenna smirked, but her eyes betrayed unease. "Yeah, well, Dracula's house doesn't have a gift shop." The three friends laughed nervously, but as they pushed open the heavy wooden doors, the laughter died. Inside, the lobby was warm and grand, glittering chandeliers, a roaring fireplace, velvet chairs. Yet beneath the glamour lingered something cold, something watching. At the front desk, the clerk handed them their keys. "Room 218, she said softly. Her hand trembled slightly. Emily frowned. "That's one of the haunted ones, right?" The clerk's smile was tight. "Some say it's the most haunted." The room looked innocent enough. Antique bed frame, lace curtains, floral wallpaper faded by time. But the moment they stepped inside, the air dropped to an icy chill. Emily rubbed her arms. "The heater's not working." They unpacked, laughed, tried to brush it off. But later that night, as they lay in the dark, footsteps echoed above them. Slow, heavy, deliberate. Jenna sat up. "Wait, isn't this the top floor?" Before anyone could answer, 3 sharp knocks rattled the door. Marcus swung it open. Nothing but the long, empty hallway. When he turned back, his breath caught. A man stood by the bed. He wore old stonemason's clothes, his head crushed on one side, bones protruding. His hollow eyes locked on Emily before his body dissolved into mist. Emily screamed. The next morning, a housekeeper whispered as she made the bed, "Michael, the stonemason. He fell to his death while building the hotel. He still works, and sometimes he doesn't like company." On the second night, Emily couldn't sleep. The hallway outside their room felt alive, shadows moving where there shouldn't be any. When she peeked through the crack of the door, she saw her, a woman in an old-fashioned gown, pacing slowly, muttering under her breath. Her eyes were wide, her hands shaking as she clutched at her dress. Emily whispered, "Hello?" The woman's head snapped up. Her face was pale, her mouth twisted into a grimace. "Stay away from him," she hissed. "Stay away from the doctor." Then she vanished. The next day, they learned her name from a tour guide, Theodora, a cancer patient from the days when Norman Baker ran his fraudulent hospital. She had died here, alone. Curiosity pulled them downward, past the lobby, past the creaking stairs, into the damp belly of the hotel. The basement was colder than outside. Rusted gurneys lined the walls, shadows pooling in every corner. "This is where Baker kept his patients," Marcus said, his voice echoing, "and where he stored the ones who didn't make it." As if on cue, a low moan drifted through the hall, then another. Soon, the entire corridor filled with the sound of weeping. Figures emerged, emaciated men and women in hospital gowns, their faces hollow, their bodies scarred. They reached out with trembling hands, eyes pleading. Emily's flashlight flickered. In the last flash of light, she saw them crowding the walls, their mouths opening in silent screams. Then darkness swallowed them whole. Marcus insisted on pushing farther. "We have to see the morgue," he whispered, though his voice shook. The morgue door groaned open. Inside, an autopsy table stood in the center, metal drawers lining the walls. The smell of rot lingered, though no bodies remained. Marcus pulled open one drawer. Empty. He grinned nervously. "See? Nothing to—" The other drawers slammed open at once, metal screeching. The temperature dropped to freezing. Emily felt a hand, icy and thin, brush across her back. A voice rasped from the dark. "He promised us life, but gave us death." Marcus turned pale. Behind him, a tall shadow stretched across the wall. Hunched, wearing a white coat, Norman Baker ran his fraudulent hospital. She had died here, alone. Curiosity pulled them downward. Past the lobby, past the creaking stairs, into the damp belly of the hotel. The basement was colder than outside. Rusted gurneys lined the walls, shadows pooling in every corner. "This is where Baker kept his patients," Marcus said, his voice echoing, "and where he stored the ones who didn't make it." As if on cue, a low moan drifted through the hall, then another. Soon, the entire corridor filled with the sound of weeping. Figures emerged, emaciated men and women in hospital gowns, their faces hollow, their bodies scarred. They reached out with trembling hands, eyes pleading. Emily's flashlight flickered. In the last flash of light, she saw them crowding the walls, their mouths opening in silent screams. Then darkness swallowed them whole. Marcus insisted on pushing farther. "We have to see the morgue," he whispered, though his voice shook. The morgue door groaned open. Inside, an autopsy table stood in the center, metal drawers lining the walls. The smell of rot lingered, though no bodies remained. Marcus pulled open one drawer. Empty. He grinned nervously. "See? Nothing to—" The other drawers slammed open at once, metal screeching. The temperature dropped to freezing. Emily felt a hand, icy and thin, brush across her back. A voice rasped from the dark. "He promised us life, but gave us death." Marcus turned pale. Behind him, a tall shadow stretched across the wall. Hunched, wearing a white coat, Norman Baker. That night, their dreams were not their own. Emily dreamed of hospital beds lined in rows, patients screaming as Baker injected them with colored liquids. Jenna dreamed of being strapped to the autopsy table, unable to scream as shadows surrounded her. Marcus dreamed of Baker himself, smiling, whispering, "You're my patient now." They woke at the same time. The room shook violently. The mirror cracked. The lights exploded. And then the ghosts came. Michael the stonemason appeared first, his crushed skull dripping shadows. Theodora stood in the corner, her hands covering her face. The patients from the basement pressed against the walls. And at the foot of the bed stood Norman Baker, smiling, his eyes cold. "You've checked in," he rasped. "And now you'll never leave." The bed lifted off the floor, slammed down. The walls bled with shadow. Emily screamed until her voice broke. When the staff entered room 218 the next morning, the room was destroyed, furniture overturned, sheets shredded, glass shattered. But Emily, Marcus, and Jenna were gone. Their suitcases remained. Their phones, their wallets, their shoes, all untouched. Only the whispers lingered. Guests who stay in room 218 today report hearing 3 distinct voices at night. Sometimes they laugh, sometimes they cry, sometimes they scream. And in the morgue below, late at night, the body drawers still rattle. The Crescent Hotel doesn't let go. Once you check in, you belong to it, forever. The Crescent Hotel stood silent at dawn, its towers cutting through the morning fog. From the outside, nothing had changed. Tourists still snapped photos. Cars still parked along the drive. Staff went about their routines, but room 218 remained sealed. No one had seen Emily, Marcus, or Jenna since that night. Their belongings stayed neatly packed, waiting, as if the owners might return at any moment. But the owners never did. Management tried to explain it away. Guests sometimes disappeared, running off, skipping bills. But the staff knew better. They heard the screams. They felt the walls tremble at 3:17 a.m. They knew the hotel had claimed 3 more souls. Down in the basement, the morgue drawers rattled softly, though no one was near. A single drawer slid open, slow as a whisper. Inside was not a body, but a suitcase. Emily's suitcase. The lights flickered. From the darkness of the morgue doorway, a figure appeared. Norman Baker, dressed in his sharp white suit, smiling. "Welcome," he murmured, "to my hospital." Behind him stood Michael the stonemason, Theodora, Dr. Ellis, and dozens of the patients. Their hollow eyes glowed faintly in the dark, and in the center, bound by shadows, were Emily, Marcus, and Jenna, faces pale, mouths open in silent screams. They had become part of the Crescent now, eternal guests in a hotel that never let go. To this day, travelers who dare stay in. Room 218 claimed to hear 3 distinct voices whispering in the dark. "Don't open the door. He's still here. Please, run." But by then, it's already too late. Because once you check into the Crescent Hotel, you never check